Good evening, people, and welcome to our March edition of our first Sunday of the month get-together, our Electric Cosmology Talking Opportunity. Yay. And I think I'll hand you straight over to Rob. He can introduce both our Skype guest and our own guest here in West London. So I'll hand you over to Rob.
Yeah. Okay. Shall I stand up?
Back to you.
So as Phil said, this is our March first Sunday of the month Electric Cosmology Talking Opportunity. If you're watching, thanks very much. We've set out a bit of a plan for this first half of this year. When we were talking to Walt Thornhill in January, we trying to look at different scales and see how electric phenomena apply to those scales. So last month we talked to Edwin and with his structured atom model and tried to look at atomic theory in relation to electric cosmology. We talked about Boscovich and Newton, the structured atom model that Edwin's working on, and other models and their various costs and benefits. This month we are really happy. We've got our local hero, Chee.
Oh, hi.
Hey, this is Chee. He's going to talk us through cellular biology?
Yes, cellular biology, amalgamation of different things related to healing, living well, pH, just a snapshot of everything, really.
So we've got this cellular focus this month. Next month we're going to take it up a scale again and probably look at sort of, if you like, the human scale, the level of the actual organism. There will be expanding on some of the themes with Chee's touching on this month, and our aim is then to go up again in scale. We have Phil, Francis and Piers Corbin going to talk about the weather. We're going to ask Michael Claridge eventually to do the really big stuff, the astronomical type stuff. We're doing this with a view to collating experts and interested parties to put together a curriculum, an electric cosmology curriculum, organised around scale, because as I think probably everyone who's watching this is familiar with the fractal, the scalar nature of the electromagnetic phenomena, lend themselves to this form of organisation. I mean, there are points where phenomena seem to coalesce around scale. You don't get stars bigger or smaller than a certain size. You don't get creatures such as ourselves bigger or smaller than certain size. Certain phenomena seem to accrete around certain degrees of scale. So that's how we're going to organise our electric cosmology curriculum. Now, I'm really excited. We've got a couple of more people turning up, so I might have to jump in and out. But yeah, if you're ready, Chee, we've got Dr. Chee Wong talking about electric cellular biology.
Okay. Shall I just start?
Past? Yeah. Sorry. There we go.
Okay.
I think we should just introduce Neil.
Oh, I apologise.
Oh, yes,
yeah,
please.
so we were just chatting to Neil. He feels like he's in the room. But joining us, thank you, Phil. That's
okay.
Hi, Neil. Sorry about that. Neil, would you like to just
tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, please. Okay, hang on, Neil.
Hold on a sec, Neil. Hold on a sec, Neil. Sorry, it's my mistake. I was checking on my headphone. I forgot to put this back in. So just hold with me. There we go. And right, let's do that and that. And we should hear you. Can we hear you now, Neil?
How's this?
That's good. Sorry, can you start again and introduce yourself, what you are, and where you come from, basically, in the electric universe. Thank you.
Certainly, I've been involved in the electric universe community probably for a dozen or so years. I'm an electrical engineering technologist from Moncton, New Brunswick, in Canada, and I've been a scholar for the Thunderbolts project, and I do some volunteer work for them. Also, I run the Electric View podcast with, of course, a few other wonderful people, Heather, Dave, Robert, and of course friends, which you're very much aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, having been on it a couple of times myself, 3 times I think in one form or another. Anyway, yeah. So time to hand over to our Dr. Chee, who's now going to take us up a level to the level of cells.
Right. So to kick off, if we can go to the first slide. Right. So might need to explain it.
I can't.
Fine. In this slide, it shows various giants that we have to stand on to get where we are about the understanding of cellular biology. So the first gentleman we're going to introduce is Victor Schauberger. He wrote a very similar book talking about our senses' toil, the cause of the world crisis. And this led to the idea of implosion and vortices in water. We have a whole bunch of other folks. Professor Osman is in energy medicine. He teaches about grounding. We have Robert Becker and Gerald Tennant. They describe how cellular pH is really about cellular voltage. We also have a whole host of people who looked into cutaneous electrostimulation. So there's Yoshio Nakamoto, and they came with the idea of a meridian points. There was Margaret Patterson. She was a Scottish surgeon, so she looked at electroacupuncture. We have also Harold Burr. He came up with the ideas that living systems have a living field. And lastly, we have Professor Pollack, who wrote about the fourth phase of water, looking into all the investigations of water. So we will go into detail further into the next slide.
Can you next one?
Yeah, just skip it to the next one. Yeah. So in this slide, we're looking at Victor Schauberger from 1885 to 1958. He was actually just a forest warden, and he observed nature very closely. And he noticed one day when looking at trout, they could seem to apparently apparate up waterfalls. And he came up with this idea that, okay, there was a lot of energy in flowing water and maybe a nature system. And he was pretty much a water wizard. He was a pioneer and gave us all the understanding of quantum and energy effects in water. So he was responsible for developing the trout turbine based on how trouts go up waterfall in 1930. Subsequently, he repeated Lord Kelvin's experiment of electrical energy from water and managed to generate 20,000 volts. Yes, and then subsequently in 1940, he developed the repulsive prototype in Berlin and Vienna, and Hitler and Himmler really liked what he was doing, and that led to a branch of UFO type technology. Lastly, in 1945, he was more interested in soil fertility and plant agronomy. And he died, unfortunately, as a heartbroken man because people wanted his knowledge and secrets. Next, we will talk also of another water wizard called Professor Pollack. So if we go to the next slide.
Okay, can I just... Neil, do you know anything about Schauberger?
Oh, not nearly as much as some.
Yeah, I mean, he's a fascinating figure, isn't he? Can you go back? I just wanted... I read... a couple of books by a guy called Callum Coates on Schauberger. He's a guy who's translated a lot of Schauberger's work into English. I didn't know, this is just almost, it is an anecdote, but when Schauberger was taken to see Hitler, or, invited, which I guess is the same as, but gun close to your head, Max Planck was in the room. And Max suddenly, very interestingly, Eric Lerner points out that a lot of early quantum physicists were kind of Nazis. Niels Bohr did decide to stay in Europe when he could have left, etc. But Max Planck was there, and when this is the anecdote anyway, when Hitler turned round to Max Planck, having heard what Schauberger said about what the repulsing was able to do, how the trout engine worked, and so on, Max Planck turned around and said, "Well, I'm a scientist, and that has nothing to do with nature." Which I thought was quite an interesting remark, because he was obviously trying to assert his authority and probably didn't have any idea about what Schauberger was talking about operated, in terms of his worldview.
Scharberger was interesting because as a forest warden, he didn't have a formal backing in physics.
Yeah.
But after observing nature directly and direct observation, he would study all the sciences he needed in his spare time to educate himself. And what he really noticed is when the water... We can pop to the next slide. Okay.
Is that right?
Yep, that's fine. So here's just a really quick diagram that shows how the cell works as a capacitor in a circuit. So you need free electrons to charge the cell, and these electrons are stored within the fat membrane of the cell. And electrons that are free are known as electron donors, and these electron donors are free to go to do work in the cell. And so when we walk about and we do our daily activity, we help to recharge our cells and effectively our organs and our bodies. So, next one. So the main thing to understand is the cell environment works in a very narrow, what we call pH. And all pH really means is the potential of hydrogen, or the amount or the power of hydrogen, which effectively is the voltage in a solution. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah. So the potential hydrogen has a very narrow operating gradient of 7.35 to 7.45. When you translate that into voltage, that is minus 20 millivolts to minus 25 millivolts at a normal temperature. So if we go to the next one. Now in this slide, it shows what happens when you run outside the normal operating voltage. So when your cells need to heal or repair, you have more free electrons, and it goes to a pH of 7.88, or roughly minus 50 millivolts. And this means the liquid is more alkaline. Whereas when you have a more acidic environment, let's say a pH of 6.48, or this translates to roughly positive 30 millivolts. It means it's deprived of electrons, it's electron stealing. And this is what you see when you have a disease process, when you're slightly ill, or you have inflammation, or even cancer. And this is known as an acidotic state. Interestingly enough, when you have a can of soda, this is quite acidic, or even Coca-Cola is at pH of 3. So effectively, that means this is kind of like dead water. Because in a normal liquid, you have a certain amount of dissolved oxygen to do oxidation and breathing. Whereas when you have an acidic drink or a carbonated drink, that has less dissolved oxygen. So effectively, that's not living water. So that doesn't really help. Yes.
Yeah.
So with the next slide, please.
Sure.
So next, we should really look at how we're going to measure these voltages in the cell. So effectively, you could do it many ways. You could stick a needle in the skin, or you could use a very complicated, what we call pH voltmeter. It has a very sensitive microelectrode that they put with a reference and to the target point. You can also use very sensitive dyes with proteins that bind onto the cells, or you could use a very expensive MRI for the cells. For our purposes, we found a very sensitive test that someone has done recently. And so that's the paper on the right. Oh.
Yeah, decided to turn itself off for me. So very good.
It's fine. I can talk about the pH cells.
You carry on.
Yeah. So to measure the cells, we've come with a really new way to measure it, and they basically use a very sensitive dye hooked up to a pH voltmeter, and that allows them to have a sensitivity of up to 0.2 pH units in a normal operating pH solution. And what they could differentiate was the difference between very aggressive cancer cells and normal cancer cells. And these seem to have a pH of 6.1 to 6.4, or pH 6.7 to 6.9 in a slightly acidic state. Yep, and the next slide. So as a summary, we have three really important bits here. So the voltage that allows you to heal is minus 50 millivolts. And when you see the minus sign, that really means there are free electrons to repair the cell. Where if you look up on the top left, you have an operational voltage of minus 25 millivolts. And so this is like the normal pH of 7.35. So if you notice, to heal, you suddenly go by twice, from minus 25 to minus 50 millivolts. And anything, when you reduce your voltage of less than minus 20 millivolts, you tend to get very ill. If you have a disease process, you notice it goes 50 millivolts the opposite way to plus 30 millivolts. So it goes from minus 25 to plus 30 millivolts. And that means when you discharge of electrons, or if you think of your body as a smartphone, and it doesn't have a chance to recharge throughout the day, it needs to recharge. So that's what the plus 30 millivolts means.
So just to
Yes.
with a thought, you say obviously cans of Coke aren't good for you.
Yes.
That makes sense also because of the pH, and this
Yes.
is why, for example, Schauberger talked about the vitality, was it, of spring water?
Yes.
Presumably because of its, if we were able to go back in time and talk to him or look at what he was saying, we could maybe translate that into the language you're talking now. Like millivolts essentially meaning more available electrons,
Right.
leading to greater health.
Or basically, living water, basically every stream or well has natural free electrons in it.
Yeah.
Or structured water.
Yeah.
So it would have a negative 50 millivolts, for example. That would be very helpful for your health.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting.
So they're all kind of tied together, and you need to build a matrix of information about how best to introduce all these really different concepts, which could be multiple books in itself.
Well, yeah. There's a couple of books. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Next.
if we have a look at the next slide, it's another form of measurement. So if you cannot directly measure your cell, you can also do something called a biological impedance analysis. Basically, if you put an electrode between 2 points on your skin, you run a tiny little current through, then it will measure the resistance from point A to B between different proteins and fat in the cells, and then using a basic calculation of V, voltage is equals to amp and resistance, you can calculate what the voltage is. So that's what they use commercially in your stores these days, or your supermarket, to see how much muscle mass you have, or fat, or total body water.
Oh.
Yeah, so if you hold on to these handles or in the gym,
Yeah.
you do the running, they test how much your heart rate is and how much your muscle mass is and whatnot. So
And
this is how it works.
And they do it through
A small electrical current goes through your body to form a circuit. So you need
both hands
on,
okay.
or 2 electrodes onto your skin.
Yeah.
So with all these measurements, you can very accurately find what the right pH of voltage is in the cell. And this gives you a really good way to figure out how to live well. So with the next slide, we just consolidate further the idea of what an acid is or a base is. So when you look at a cell, normally traditionally in medicine, you're taught something's acidic or something's alkaline. When a patient is a bit sick, we look at what we call acidosis. We take arterial blood gases, and we're really obsessed with what we call the lactic acid. That's the same thing as when you're running. You are not able to have aerobic respiration or oxygenation, and then the cells generate electricity using anaerobic respiration. Or the same process where bacteria love to thrive when there's no oxygen.
So bacteria grow where there's low
oxygen states or acidic states.
So bacteria,
they love low oxygen or no oxygen state. They call it anaerobic state.
Sure.
And then basically it's in a positive, if you put in a positive charge state. So they're trying to steal electrons.
Yeah, and bacteria thrive in that kind of
that environment. Yes.
That's interesting. Isn't
Yes. So basically, the free radicals are also acidotic state.
Yeah.
Whereas when someone's in slightly more alkaline state, it means they're electron donor. They're free to go to donate electrons to do good work, to repair cells, to charge your whole body. They're similar to also antioxidants. So when you eat fruit, these have a lot of free electrons. So raw unprocessed food have a lot of electrons you can incorporate in your body to recharge yourself. So in the next slide, it's a rough look at what kind of different pHs, which you probably won't be able to see, but basically at a pH of 7, which is pure water, sterile water or battery water is kind of dead. Battery acid is like pH of 0. sulfuric acids like pH of 1. Ammonia or soapy water is about on the far end of a pH of 12. Bleach is pH of 13. Note that something more alkaline probably not so great for you because your body loves stay in a very neutral pH of 7.35 to 4.5. So taking something slightly alkaline is just about right. About seawater is about pH of 8, baking soda is about pH of 9. Anything more than that in the body probably can't really take it. So next we're going to look at the original investigation by Robert Becker of cell regeneration.
Cool. Salamanders.
That's right. So what's really great is there are two amphibians we can look at. We can look at frogs and we can look at salamanders. Salamanders are amazing creatures. Somehow, whenever you cut off anything in the salamander, an eyeball, a limb, a tail, it would regrow that bone and that limb totally, perfectly. And this is similar to when you look at a young kid when they have a scar, they fall down, they get gouged, and the skin forms back perfectly. Whereas when you're in the older age, you will get scar tissue and you don't really heal up that well. Your bones don't knit very nicely. So when they looked at the salamanders, they noticed that when they cut the limbs, it will go from a normal voltage for like say minus 10 millivolts to plus 30 millivolts. And this was called the limb regeneration of salamanders. But what they found really interestingly was when they cut or amputated a limb, they took some skin cells of where they cut this and they implanted it on either the head or the tail. And wherever they made the cut, it would regrow. Let's say you amputate upper limb, and you take that cells from the upper limb and implant it next to the neck, it would grow an upper limb. Similarly, when you take those cells and put it where the tail is, it would grow a lower leg. And if they left these cell scrapings after 10 days, it would then regrow the original limb it was cut off. So let's say you amputated an upper limb and you waited 10 days and you made an incision in the tail, it would grow an upper limb where the tail was. So they couldn't really figure out why this was happening. Perhaps some sort of cell stimulus from the nerves was responsible. So they started taking off the nerves by small incremental pieces. And yet, no matter what they did, these limbs would regrow during this test. And they realized scar tissue has a lower impedance and may be locally responsible for regrowing the scar tissue, the new skin cells, or limbs within the first 7 to 10 days.
But to make a whole limb is quite extraordinary, isn't it?
It is.
You know, it is. So are we talking about what Rupert's talking about morphic fields? Are we talking about a memory being there?
Right. So early investigators termed the idea of a morphic field or a life field, so L field. It's Harold Burr, but currently scientists don't quite want to look at that. But it has some really good basis.
Well,
because what tells a stem cell to become a head or a tail, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, because you're saying you're even transferring cells from one part to the other, and it still creates the right body part.
Yes.
That again is totally extraordinary.
What are the instructions?
Yeah. Well, where is the instructions?
So it looks like if you make a cut in, let's say, your neck, the
DNA is the same whether it's from your hand, it's from your foot, or anywhere, isn't it?
Right.
The DNA is, it's not different for a part of the body. It's the same.
They probably suggest there's some sort of biomorphic field which we haven't been able to fully test.
Yeah.
But locally, scar tissue calls the local cells to become inflamed, grow new parts to repair itself fully to what its original blueprint was. And to really test this, they tested this on frogs. Frogs do not have the same regenerative properties as salamanders. So when they amputated the hand of a frog, it wouldn't regrow. But what they did was they dipped it in aqueous salts, and then it would regrow the skin and even grow a digit. So something about salts or electricity is responsible for regeneration of cells. Very interesting. Another scientist decided to poke the amputated limb in a frog, and they found that irritant would also help bring some sort of early stem cells to regenerate.
So it's almost some impurities acting as a catalyst.
Right. Now, if you look at it as a wiring system, if you look at a conductor, let's say a copper wire, is a pure conductor, right?
Yeah.
If you look at fat, it's an insulator.
Yeah.
Okay. But a semiconductor is an insulator with impurities.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you have fat with some sort of conductive elements, it can become a semiconductor. And when you put an array of positive and negative semiconductors together, you get a transistor, right? And basically that's the same thing as cell membrane. And then you put them in series, they work as a resonance.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you look at the next slide, next.
Do you want to carry on? I'll swap with him.
And,
Does mitochondria come into it?
it can do. The next thing we'll look at is limb regenerating children.
Yeah, because okay, go ahead.
Yes. So normally cell regeneration is not as good as salamanders in mammals, except children. Now children are really interesting. Up to the age of 7, their thinking hasn't fully formed. The brain and the skull hasn't fully fused. They even have supernatural experiences where they can see, pretend friends. But after the age of 7, they're just pretty much like normal adults, and cell regeneration pretty much dips. Now, in this example here, normally when limbs are chopped off during the accident to a lawnmower, people try to just clean the amputated finger and don't really have a chance in hell of regenerating it or saving it.
This is the fingertip, isn't it? Before it hits the bone.
Right. But if where the distal end is, one nurse and doctor forgot to really clean it and left it for a few weeks. I noticed, after 3 months, it would just regrow back naturally.
Yeah.
And then, some prominent scientist says this is actually a really great way to regrow tissue generation in children. It seems that they still have the capability of blastoma to regrow and differentiate into bones, cartilage, tendons, blood vessels, skins, and nails even. So children have almost the same capability of limb regeneration as salamanders up to the distal fingertip.
Wow.
We can regrow that.
Yeah, I can't imagine being a doctor to a child whose fingertip is cut off and being able to explain to the parent the best thing to do is leave it alone.
Yeah, it only works up to the first crease of where the fingernail is.
And
if
why would you say? I mean, I know the age of 7 is interesting because I know in terms of the brain.
The myelin sheath is not fully formed till after the age of 7 as well.
Sorry, you say?
The myelin sheath.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, but you're saying at the age of 7, roughly, you'd lose this.
Probably, yeah.
About that time.
Yes. Yes. Holy number.
Okay. Well,
you're less divine, or you've completed your divineness. Maybe if you want to look at numbers. But yeah, this kind of method, is laughed at younger residents out of training. They look as though you're kind of crazy, but this actually really works. And I think if you look at cell regeneration, the way stem cells are recruited to form nerve junctions is probably what children still have when you cut off the distal end of the limb.
Oh, so
same thing in
their bone marrow produces enough.
Although in adults your bone marrow has some capability, in young children the capability of salamanders is retained when they're young.
Yeah.
And that's why they heal over so nicely when they have a nice brutal fall or fight.
Which is lucky.
Yes.
You get cut up a lot.
It's almost perfect. So. Right, so next, when we look at the cell, there are just a few things you need. So if you next slide. So for cells to repair or to stay healthy, you just need a few ingredients all at the same time. You need the right pH on the left. You need the right amount of structured water. You need the right cell voltage, which is about -25 to -50 millivolts, which is slightly alkaline. You need oxygen. You also need sunlight. We'll come back to why you need sunlight later, but basically sunlight, when it hits water, structures water and gives you the right voltage. You also need raw ingredients to make cells, and this requires you to have a good amount of fat and a good amount of vitamins and minerals to allow the fat to conduct the right amount of voltage. You also need the right amount of amino acids and proteins. So normally when you eat meat, these proteins then get broken down to amino acids that also gets reconstructed back as proteins later on. These proteins are required for the cytoplasm within the cell. Cytoplasm can be thought of as the machinery inside every cell. So you unfortunately do need carbohydrates, proteins, and fat in a good moderate amount. You can't cut out any food group as much as all trendy food fats require to. So with the next look, we're going to look at fats.
Cool.
Right. So that's the blank slide, so maybe the next one.
Okay.
I was going to add something else, but yes. So let's look at fat. The body roughly needs 20 to 25% of fat. And you've got three types of fat. So the cell membrane itself needs fatty acid to form the phospholipid bilayer, basically a membrane or a great wall, so you can form an artificial electrochemical gradient to work as a battery.
Phospholipid,
That's right. So basically, it's two phospholipid layers, and they self-organize.
yeah. Why phospholipid, not just lipid? Why?
Well, it's apolipids as well.
Huh?
Apolipids as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to why phospholipids?
I think what happens is the currency in the body uses something called ATP, which is adenosine and triphosphate. Okay. And that's the stored battery. Whereas when it's discharged, it becomes ADP, adenine diphosphate.
Oh, yes. So the tri to the diphosphate.
That's right. And what happens is this biphosphate is a ball, and it's got two little legs.
Yeah.
The ball is the electrical conductor, and the two legs are actually twirled up together. It works as a liquid crystal display, 90 degrees to one another. Right. So when it's opposed at 90 degrees, it's closed. Yeah. And when legs open up, untwisted, it allows light to come through as well. Because the cell is both a microprocessor, an LCD, and the digital processing unit of the cell. Right. The other fats you need are essential fats because you need it for your immunity, you need it for your blood clotting to work very well, you need it to absorb calcium well so you can have better electrical conductivity, and for your heart, you also need to absorb vitamins A, D, and K. Without the fat, you can't absorb these. You can pop all your pills, but it won't be absorbed by the liver. And lastly, you have the demon called the stored fat, which is really hard to move off. It can last up to 8 to 10 years, so no matter what you can do, the body wants to keep on to stored fat. Yes, for your survival. So next we're going to look at natural versus plastic fat. Right. So next slide. You have natural sources of fat. This can be like butter or ghee or vegetable like coconut fat. Yeah. But we realize with commercialization, fat or food with fats don't really last very long, 2 or 3 days. So they went rancid. So to allow foods to live longer, they would boil this at, let's say, 5 to 6 hours at high temperatures, 350 degrees Celsius. Effectively, what happened is those food processors and fat became an emulsifier or a kind of plastic type of fat, and what we call trans fat or margarine. And what happens if you look at this diagram, it's split on the left and right. So on the left is what your cell membrane would look like if you had normal natural fat. It would absorb electricity in and out, or electrons. But on the far right, you notice it's slightly pale and milky. And imagine the trans fat is absorbed in the cell membrane, it becomes like a cellophane layer. So it covers your normal cell membranes into a plastic adhesive.
So the trans fat become
incorporated in your cell membrane, it becomes like a plastic fat. So it encapsulates your whole cell.
And reduces your cell's capacity to create charge.
Right. So what happens now is your cell as a battery is slowly discharging. And once it runs out of electricity, it's going to ask the body for new resources. Yeah. So it's going to tell the brain, please send me some new currency of glucose and insulin. Insulin will help the glucose to come into the cells. But because of the plastic fat layer, the electrons and the glucose can't come into the cell. And what happens is all the insulin sits outside the cells and become insulin resistant, leading you to have type 2 diabetes. And all the sugar that sits outside the cell can't come into the cell to do good work, to become protein, to become DNA.
All because the trans fat,
interestingly, is covering the...
Yeah, it's funny this is called trans fat, but it stops transport.
Yes.
Yeah. It's almost...
all in the name.
Yeah, it was just an interesting work of the language.
Yes, everything is in plain sight, really. It's just when you realize what the Rosetta key is, these artificial or plastic fats basically stop your cells from doing good work. Yeah. Now, this has a knock-on implication in everything. So your central nervous system can't conduct electricity very well. You cannot recharge your body. Basically, your whole body, as a smartphone, for example, runs out of charge. So you're going to become depressed, kind of, low mood, low energy. Your brain, you can't really think very well.
And these are all the classic bad places to get fat, like
yes.
Sort of, I'm going to say like a fast food kind.
Right. So any processed food will have trans fat, and what will happen is when you eat processed food, you get fatter because all the extra glucose gets converted into fat because it can't be absorbed by the cell, so it's not doing anything.
Yeah.
So when you eat bad fat, you get fat, basically.
Right.
If you eat natural sources of food or unprocessed food, you get healthy. You get the right voltage.
So yeah, there's the difference between healthy and unhealthy food in terms of voltage. I've never heard that before.
Yes. So effectively, you have what you call good fat and bad fat.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, anyone who's read a diet, or we're all aware,
Right.
of the different qualities of food, but to be able to break it down to the cellular level in terms of electricity. I've never heard
And
before.
what happens also is your liver is not able to electrically work, so it can't detoxify all the toxins in your body. And therefore, your bile doesn't work, so your gallbladder can't release the right amount of bile to emulsify these fats that you have come in. So you're going to get heartburn, you're going to get all sorts of knock-on effects, your intestines get clogged up. So generally, things don't really work very well because the fat is not water soluble. So without the bile, you can't absorb it, and you lead on to all the chronic diseases.
Right.
Yeah, great stuff. So if you can, but you can reverse it by just eating normal fruit. Fruit has a different kind of sugar, and also lots of electrons. Basically, if it's unprocessed, it's probably good for you, but you obviously need to eat some sort of cooked meat, although eating raw meat is a bit trickier. So yeah, raw fruits, raw vegetables are pretty good. Cooked foods in a stew is not too bad, but processed, stew, because like chicken and chicken stew, for example, it can be quite good. It can become a nutritious broth. So mixtures of vegetables, fruit, good stews are really nice for you. Having kind of processed food, probably your body is able to cope with it up to a certain point.
Yeah.
Because of the deep fry, the kind of oils you use, you got different oils you can use. So you got coconut oil, and then you got corn oil or canola oil. These have been proven to have a lot of side effects for the body, but we can give a different talk on another day. It can be a bit more controversial, but effectively, processed foods and stuff are not so healthy for you. Yeah. Electrically.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to hear it described electrically.
Yes.
Nice.
So next we're going to talk about how cells transfer energy. So now we know how cells get energy, and we know how cells are store the electrical energy in its cell membrane. How does it transfer energy to other organs? Well, the cell also works as a resonant, what you call Tesla circuit, or resonant AC circuit.
Yeah.
So the electricity stored in the cell membrane can be transmitted to another cell or organ.
Now, is this a cell adjacent?
Either adjacent or in a resonant way, just in a bunch of
at a distance.
Yes,
Yeah.
or wirelessly.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you look at the next slide, I'm going to show you about a recent talk about how cells in the brain transmit information wirelessly. So this just came out only 2 weeks ago, and they came out with this result in 2018, and they couldn't believe the results. But it appears that brain waves can transmit information from one brain wave to another faster than the speed of light, almost in a wireless kind of fashion. Imagine you're in a stadium, and the stadium had a fan wave. So when you transmit an idea, the brain just discharge this whole bunch of information from one cell to all the adjacent brain cells instantaneously.
Well, that sounds like longitudinal wave.
It could be. It works in a kind of coupling. They call it induction coupling method, which is similar to how the cells transmit.
Yeah, well, because originally I thought it would be induction, but if it's moving that quickly, that would suggest it's a longitudinal wave, which means there would have to be a connection rather than a straightforward induction. They would have to actually have a coupling, I would have thought.
Yeah, so if you look at the next one, it's a snapshot of the investigation they had.
So Neil, did you want to say something?
I didn't want to interrupt.
Well, no,
you're very welcome to. I mean, you can see what we're just trying to. She's obviously leading, but anytime I could see you. I thought I could see you formulating a thought, so I'll just thought to ask.
I could tell you that if they are as they seem to be, basically you can model a cell as a circuit, basically an RC circuit, really. I can describe what that is later, but basically the membrane becomes, as the good doctor said there, a membrane is a resistor and also provides a barrier between two layers, which of course provides capacitance. So if you are having, it's also because basically an RC circuit is like a spring. It's like of a car. The shock and spring system is literally an RC circuit. That's why your car is dampened as it continues along. This is the same way a cell is built. So you can transmit energy if there is a vibration on one, perhaps a potential change. For example, you charge up an area of the brain, a dendrite or whatever. I'm not going to go into the biological details. I don't know. But if that happens and a potential is changed, then using just simply the static electricity model of force equals K Q1 Q2 over R squared, you're going to have an instant reaction to every single other cell nearby.
Wow.
So it doesn't necessarily, the wave is longitudinal, but it's related to the instant change of a voltage nearby or potential. Because that potential, therefore, as was mentioned, will sort of cascade or transmit to other nearby things within our R squared radius, you know.
Yeah. Great.
Yep.
Lovely. Cheers, yeah.
Yep, and the cells also store energy in organs, and you have two types of organs: solid organs and hollow organs. So effectively, if you look at the heart or the kidneys, they work as a giant battery packs throughout the body, and they form a kind of a circular circuit going from the front to the back. And
Well, isn't it a lovely fact that we got the circuit, the word with the term circuit, from our human circulation? It does show.
Yes. So yes, and in Chinese philosophy, we look at the kidneys as giving life energy. So the heart and the kidneys, they provide energy to the intestines and the lungs, is it? So solid and hollow. So they go around in a circuit. And the body basically is a giant wiring system, multiple wiring systems. You've got 3 or 4 different wiring systems.
Circuits.
You know, acupuncture does work. You know, you can look at different kind of impedance models and how you transmit electrons. It doesn't just use one pathway. It's not just through the nerves. It's through fluid, adjacent wirelessly, using even light and using even the properties of water, the 4th phase of water.
And this is biophotons now you're talking about.
That's right,
Like heat,
Yes.
Yes.
You can't really see tests in here. But yeah, I can put the slide on later on the net so you can look at the full study of how the induction coupling method works in the brain. So if we go to the next one, we'll just have a really good overview of the science of hugging.
The science of hugging, this is my type.
Yes. So if you look at humans, they're all rechargeable batteries. So if you look at this picture of this giant tree there, basically everyone is a giant battery. And some people are in different states of charge. So if you're fully charged, let's say 100%, and you go hug another person who's 50%, you get to equalize and give some of your free electrons just by hugging or shaking one another. So if you pop into the next slide. So when someone hugs one another, you know, you have the flow of electrons or free electrons between one another. So for example, let's say you have a sick child, and you're a parent, you come and give a hug to the child suddenly gets better and you get sicker. And it's the same thing with stroking a cat or a dog. They're very energetic, full of free electrons in the skin and the fur. So by stroking it, you know, you get to discharge or steal effectively their energy into your own circulation.
Actually, that's incredibly true with regards to cats. That's what we used to use to. Well, we still use to charge up a Van de Graaff generator. We'll use like the fur of a cat or a fur of an animal, and we'll rub it on a piece of fiberglass or something. And that fur will release more and more positive negative electrons to the dome, and it becomes positively charged. It begins zapping things. That's basically how it works.
I mean, I'm assuming you're not using the hair while it's still attached to the animal. You've got the
You can.
Well, it doesn't. I don't want to recommend it.
Spinning around. You will not like it at all.
No,
but while you're rubbing the cat, you are a different potential. Your creative capacitance. Every one of those little hairs will have the potential of creating little, I guess you could say, charges up them as you have potential between them, and they will discharge at the little ends of the tips, and that's why you get that feeling when you rub them. And I can see. I mean, they do say if you have a cat, you're going to live longer, and there's probably a reason for it. So,
I was just going to ask. You've got the animal fur, and you're using it on your Van de Graaff generator.
they used to do this all the time.
Yeah,
In the old days, they would rub a little stick, and they would poke people with it. And, woo, you know.
Yeah, it sounds like the kind of science I want to be involved with. How is
party
it?
trick back in the 1700s and stuff.
Yeah, no, I've played the same sort of thing. I think I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Well, on the side of animals and cats,
Yeah.
you could look at it as this way: every cell is a rechargeable battery. It generates an electrical field or force field barrier, and so your body generates a giant force field barrier. We call it a bioplasmic field. People call it an aura. So when you're stroking the cat, it's feeling in a good mood, and mood and emotions also are known as a magnetic kind of a frequency. So bad moods actually kind of block your electrical field or your aura. So when you're stroking the cat, it feels good. You feel good as well. So that's probably why stroking a cat or a dog makes you feel good, and you live longer.
Huh.
Yes.
Good news for pet owners.
Or just stroke someone else, or hug them all the time.
Okay.
It's like,
Stop looking at me like that when you say.
it's really great for couples when they come home and feeling really tired. Honey, give me a hug.
Yeah.
So if you go to the next slide.
That does complete a circuit, by the way, on the ground. If you're connected and you hug people, you're going to get a full circuit. This is one of the reasons why if lightning strikes, only certain people get killed because they're touching each other. Because you have a wider, it's called step voltage between the 2 points.
Yeah.
This is so if you're standing beside a lightning strike and your feet are together, the chances of you dying are quite low. However, if you're stepping, and you have a wider step, that creates a potential circuit in your body, up one leg and down the other, so to speak. And the same thing with hugging.
Yeah, but you're going across the actual two different voltages, aren't you? So you actually short across the actual step voltage.
I guess if you were standing 1 foot on rubber and 1 foot on metal, you'd be in a lot of
Yeah,
trouble.
because it's the same in construction when using diggers. If you hit a power line, you literally have to do penguin steps because of that,
Exactly.
because of the step voltage, and you're actually crossing between sort of say 100 and 200 volts. You will literally then discharge through you from one to the other.
But what I meant was that to back up his point, if you are hugging one person and one person has a different potential than yourself, then you are completing a circuit. You will discharge to the other person, and that's just
Physics, yeah.
that nothing you can do about that. That's just electricity 101. You're different potential. Here you go.
Cool.
That's it.
We talked about the next slide already anyway. So this really just what happens when you walk barefoot on the lawn as well with your soles. You get to have all this lovely free energy from Mother Earth, which is a very giant negative charge. And so you as a depleted, as you go through the day, your battery gets discharged. So you can recharge yourself just by walking on the lawn or the earth or stone. So this is probably how our forefathers used to live. Barefoot, drinking water from a living well, hugging one another, having great time without Netflix, having wine. They live long time. Cool. We can go to the next one. It's the same idea as well. When you hug a tree, the tree is probably alive with electrons. You probably form a circuit with a tree or its field.
Yeah, I can't help but thinking back to Scharberger. He talked about trees being something like the calcified husks of electrical processes because he saw the tree was just the sort of the shape.
Isn't a tree mainly out of carbon?
Sorry?
Isn't a tree mainly made out of carbon dioxide?
A tree is made of the atmosphere in which it was breathed through it. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
It's mostly carbon.
Yeah.
If you can know this simply because you actually plant a plant in a pot, and the pot does not decrease in the height of the soil does not drop relative to the amount of plant you have.
Yeah.
The actual material is being made from the atmosphere. It's basically made out of the carbon it takes from carbon dioxide.
Because for me, a few years ago, hugging trees was not something I'd happily talk to people about.
Literal tree huggers when you're turning.
Apparently, but it was just an interesting thought that your if you like, your circuit is then coupling into a bigger circuit, or you're being parallel to a larger circuit,
right.
The circuit that runs through the tree. And so, I mean, has anyone ever quantified anything to do with tree hugging apart from the likelihood of having beards, I guess, goes up
but
the more you tree hug?
The amount of burnt going to that tree is measured. Basically, there's a potential voltage between you and the ground, and that goes depending on how high you go. So if you're sitting there at say a couple hundred feet, like this giant tree here, seemingly, the amount of energy it takes to get fluids up the tree to the top of it to water it, of course, is a hydrostatic thing. But where's the energy come to make this process work? I mean, and of course, the cell itself, the cells themselves, as the tree even bends in the wind, is going to create more and more energy. It's going to take that, because this is an RC circuit. Each time you do that, you're changing the capacitance without every single cell in that tree. And you're going to basically effectively be making energy from it. Plus, you're going to be trying to deal with the fact that the tree has all this surface area on the top with the leaves and so forth, which is now connected to a large amount of higher electrons, which are I guess ions or whatever we're dealing with here, probably ions. And under the water, you have the electrons that you're dealing with is connected to the water table through an isolated surface. So you basically have this giant thing sticking up there with a potential between 2 points. Of course, there's going to be, it has a current, literally a measurable current. Not a lot, not too much, like probably in picoamps, but that's what we have going through our cells.
Plus, there's a structured water elements, because the water to be carried up will be a capillary action. So that's it naturally forms a charge already anyway.
So
I'm totally with this guy.
That's nice.
Well,
we hoped that would be a great, there's a very thorough vetting process, which is
me getting the right people together.
If you're a friend of Phil's, you're all right, basically.
The next slide is about grounding, so talking more about the same thing. So we can go to the next slide.
Again.
So it just really says that Earth maintains a massive negative electrical potential, so when you walk barefoot, you're in direct contact with the ground, and you get all the Earth's electrons conducted into your body, so that you have the same electrical potential as the Earth. You equalize. So if you walk barefoot, you're going to live longer. And the next slide shows the benefit of being grounded. So this, in the kind of like a well-being kind of terms, they call it earthing or being grounded. But effectively, they did a lot of studies, and it showed you had improved blood viscosity. You have also chronic pain relief and reduced inflammation. Your heart rate is less erratic. You get less arrhythmias. You have better autonomic system balance. You had less stress and improved cortisol. So if you look at the next slide, it shows you, for example, what happens. So they looked at the kind of infrared. So on the left is a baseline before being grounded, and 30 minutes later it shows what your body temperature and your body is like. It's more grounded, it's easier, there's less inflammation, and people with chronic back pain reported that feeling slightly better. Is it placebo, or did they actually feel much better? This is quite interesting to see. But generally, they did loads of case studies, and they all seem to do well with just 30 minutes of grounding.
That's that data there's after 30 minutes.
Yes.
No, that's quite convincing, isn't it? Really?
Well, if you look at the next one, there's a whole bunch of other studies as well. I noticed when I look at the literature, there were these three little culprits: Professor Oshman, Stephen Sinatra, and Dr. Chevalier. Dr. Stephen Sinatra is a cardiologist, but also into bioenergetic physiotherapy. Oshman was into energetics as well, so he's well known for lots of papers. And Dr. Chevalier is at the Earthing Institute that looks at all the different studies of earthing. So they looked at the effects of grounding on inflammation, the immune response, wound healing, and the treatment of chronic inflammatory autoimmune diseases. They looked at earthing of how it reduces the blood viscosity. Basically, you have less clotting issues. They looked at how grounding would also reduce muscle damage in muscle contraction. They looked at the use of earthing for health benefits and healing. And they looked at the health implications of living basically with the land. So they did all these kind of different states. They even looked at how your heart rate was, your respiratory rate, how much oxygen you had in your blood, how good your skin looked, and your skin flow. Loads and loads of tests, basically.
And this is all through 30 minutes of ground?
They use different levels and different strata. And then the next slide shows what happens over an 8-week study of sleeping. People noted to have improved sleeping or curing of insomnia with grounding or sleeping on an earthing sheet. And so this was looking at a group of people who slept, 11 out of 12 participants felt they slept better or faster. Women had less premenstrual issues or hot flushes. 9 out of 12 people felt more energetic, and 9 out of 12 felt less emotional stress or depression.
Yeah.
So basically, when you're grounded, you are more in tune with the Earth's what you call natural rhythms, because humans have the natural circadian rhythms or the diurnal rhythms.
Yeah. Is this anything? Would you say this is in any way connected to everyone's favourite resonance, the Schumann resonance?
You can do, yeah. I think as a product of Earth, it makes sense to bring resonance with the light.
Right. Resonance. Yeah. So it helps you. Okay. Yeah. Nice one.
Yeah. So you're basically in touch with Earth.
Yeah,
so,
basically, if you're not touched, all the electrons are just going to be drained out of your body, and yeah, by everything, you're actually allowing the charge to actually flow through you rather than actually depleting you. So it's got to be correct.
Yes,
it's got to be
integrating into the guidance circuit or something.
Yeah.
So Neil, you're going to say something.
I was going to say it's an if-then statement again. If there is a Schumann resonance, which there is, and if it is vibrating, which would therefore cause, for example, the ionosphere to slightly move up and down or otherwise be disturbed, even though it is 50 to 100 kilometers away from us above our heads, every single cell in our body will, by that same formula I described before, force equals K, Q1, Q2 over R squared, will be affected by that. It might not be much, but it's wiggling our body. Well, the same thing if we get near an electric field of a power line. It will be resonating our body at 60 hertz. Every single cell will be vibrating slightly. Probably much more because we're near that, but you get the idea.
Yeah,
There's if one charge is moving, the others nearby must respond. Each cell, therefore, if it has capacitance, it's an energy storage device by having capacitance. It's not just like a battery. It reacts and stabilizes itself to try to find balance again. It resists changes in voltage.
Yeah, self-organizing battery sort of thing.
The batteries are chemical storage, like plus ions and cations and stuff like that, like potassium and so forth, calcium, would be in the body. Right?
Using that reasoning as well, electronic devices will interfere with your body's natural magnetic field.
Yeah.
So having too many Wi-Fi, 4G, 5G, electronic devices in your implants, or medical devices, will affect your body's electrics as well. Not probably for the good.
So, do you not think implants are a good idea?
Probably not, because they got an RFID kind of pulse. So this is probably for pacemakers, for example. It keeps you alive, but probably not for too long.
Because R squared, the closer it is to you, the less power it has to be before it affects you. I mean, the ionosphere is extremely powerful, but it's really, really far away. But if something's inside of your body and vibrating. But this is where the question comes up. When you're dealing with 5G, And it becomes not just that, it is the amount of energy that it uses, it converts to heat, because the frequency determines the response time, like how much electricity is made. So if your frequency is higher, if it's vibrating all of your cells at a faster rate, like that means that you're causing a magnetic field change suddenly, well, at a higher rate. Therefore, you're creating inductance.
Yes.
And you're inducing other changes, which I don't even want to imagine what that exactly does, but I hope they researched it really well before they implemented it.
Well,
I'll just say that.
Well, what happens is...
I don't know what's going on. I've heard bad stuff, but I don't know the truth of it. So.
Yeah, it is hard to... It's hard to pick out the signal from the noise, I think, in the 5G debate, because there seem to be some... Obviously, there are vested interests. People have invested a lot of money into this, and then there are people who, perhaps, without a thorough understanding of it, have got a kind of an intuitive resistance, or intuitively just don't like the idea of it. So it's, I mean, where would you go for? Where do you go for information? What you consider reliable information on that kind of topic? Neil?
Safety magazines from people who are trying to protect their workers from this stuff. That would be my first guess. For example, it's true that like when you have a transmitter near you, your body is going to make heat because it's reacting. They don't know exactly why, but I think it's pretty much because of this circuitry effect. It's because the resistance of the membranes of the cells have current going across them as this capacitance constantly changes. So it's probably not, I mean, we know that when you get close to a transmitter, you shouldn't stay near it too long, like a radio transmitter, 100,000 watt transmitter. You don't want to go anywhere within like meters of that thing.
Yeah, sure.
It's a lot of, it's going to generate, it could create a lot of heat in your body. You don't want to stand in front of a radar dish. These are just common sense things you think about, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is, we're not sure of I'm sure that people have done exact effects, but those are where I would go for safety. People who will work on stuff like that at high energies and try to protect their workers from it. That would be where I would go.
Yeah. I know the answer for that. They did studies of sweat cells in the hand. They noticed that although the skin's a great insulator, sweat cells are spiral shaped. So any radio waves or transmitter will be conducted by the spiral waves to cause local heat and inductance and even cancer in the skin. And that's where the clue was, sweat cells. So unfortunately, with 4G, 3G transmitters, your sweat cells will give you away, unfortunately, and that's why you get skin cancer. Causes local heating effect.
Yeah, well, all them birds are falling out of the sky in the Netherlands, isn't they?
That's right.
All them starlings, which doesn't bode well.
So what was that?
Well, they experimented turning on 5G in the Netherlands, and all these starlings fell out of the sky dead. This was literally last week or 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
That's spooky.
Yeah, that's
very frightening, isn't it?
Well, starlings have magnetic orientation in
no,
their
that's
brains.
right. Yeah, that's why they go to do the reverberations.
Well, remember we were just talking about the frequency affects the inductance. So if you have something that's going to affect magnetic fields and vibrating this stuff and totally screw those birds up, I can envision it. I wait for further proof, but I can envision it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's only the first thing I saw, and I didn't check the sources.
You also get mass deaths in fish.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it's happening with sonar, it's at the moment, which is obviously more sound waves, but frequencies, seem to, there's not enough research gone into this.
Well, you also have to be careful about doomsaying, though, because we have occasionally here, for example, being a fishing community, there is or well, not community, I mean just in the general area, there is a situation where sometimes it can get really oxygen deprived near certain parts of the bay, and fish will die. It just happens.
Lack of oxygen.
It sucks, but it's not necessarily pollution per se. It could be an algae bloom or something like that. So
Yeah, and they produce lots of toxins, don't they? The algae. Some of them do.
Yeah. Okay, we'll come to the third part, which is about structured water. Just a very quick overview of structured water. Professor Pollack did amazing research into the four phases of water. He noted that the water in our cells were not like the normal water you have in a glass. It was actually pretty much ordered like a liquid crystal. It has similarities to ice, whereby it excluded particles and the solids as it formed. And this space origin was called the exclusion zone. And what would happen is, if you take a bottle of water and you put it in a glass, if you leave it for a while, there will be a clear barrier where there was no water between the glass and the center. Whereas, let's say if you put any dye, it would form a central cylindrical core in the middle. And they couldn't figure out why. They thought it was just a basic negative charge. But this could be orders of thousands. And this was more enhanced when it was in a capillary or or narrow tube. And the Russians did it a long time ago, and they came up with this idea called polymer water or polywater. And there was a scare whereby they thought if there was a single nucleus of this polywater, it would freeze all the water in the world. But luckily, it only had a small effect of where the surface is where water touches. Yes. So that's the normal structure of water as you know it. But structured water has 3 hydrogens, a hydronium ion. So if you go to the next slide, we'll have a look at that. So looking at this, there are 4 phases of water that we know now. So instead of liquid, solid, and vapor, you get this transitional area of liquid kind of crystalline phase. The properties of structured water can also act as a water battery. So when water gets into any surface, it organizes itself into a positive and negative state and can become a natural battery. So you may think that maybe you don't even need a membrane because water organizes itself into an artificial charged membrane.
It creates this sort of oven, if you like.
That's right. And when you apply sunlight to water, sunlight helps to break the water molecules where the hydrophilic component is, and similar to how photosynthesis works in a plant. And effectively, that's free energy for you. And therefore, when you have sunlight on your skin and it goes into the bloodstream, you get lovely structured water as well, and free energy being released. And this is a potential energy that you can harvest and use as alternative forms of solar energy. Now, if you understand the structure of water better. Lastly, structured water has this interesting whereby similar charges attract one another. It seems very counterintuitive. Now, how can a negative charge attract another negative charge? But what happens in structured water? A negative charge attracts positive charge around it, and so therefore it acts like a glue. So when you look at clouds, this is a better explanation of how different water vapor attract one another to form clumps in the cloud.
You need those catalysts to actually. The catalysts actually seem to. What is the positive charge and allows it to stick together. So it's the catalyst which actually attracted some sort of positive charge. Must be.
So yeah. So this just recaps the 4 phases of water and why it is interesting. It's neither a liquid nor a solid. This exclusivity zone is best described as a liquid crystal with physical properties analogous to raw egg white, sharing properties with ice. And basically, water, whenever it applies to anything water touches, if there's the sky, the clouds, and interface, it will form a structured water where the interface occurs.
And this is what they call the anomaly point, isn't it?
Yes.
Why ice floats on.
And that's why ice floats as well.
Yeah.
At 4 degrees, you have strange changes and why it's less dense. So next we can look at the sources of structured water in nature. So the first thing we can look at is the vortices. Vortices are a great way of increasing structured water. It occurs naturally in streams, rivers, It's a kind of a mechanical agitation. And Victor Schauberger expanded loads and loads of sciences into this, and you could have a separate talk about Victor Schauberger's
you could do a book on it.
You could do multiple books, yes.
Yeah.
So that's just a quick overview of what vortices are. And you also have multiple other sources of structured water with the next slide.
Got you.
So we talked some about it. So we start again with sunlight. When sunlight hits water, it becomes structured water. When you have spring water, all right, it's under pressure already, deep in the ground, so it becomes structured by itself. Glacial melts. Ice turns into structured water when it melts between the phase of liquid and solid. When you juice water, or juicing can also come from plant cells, so therefore that plant cellular water becomes structured juice water. In your normal blood circulation, or when you run things through a narrow capillary, the liquid becomes automatically structured. And as the red blood cells go through the capillaries, with sunlight as the flow, it becomes structured water and energy for the body. Lastly, antioxidants also maintain a negative charge in our body and form structured water. And similar with infrared light, it also helps generate this kind of living process. And so to really finish up really on the talk, try to adopt a very healthy living and positive mental attitude to live well and stay grounded. That's the last slide. That's it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Dr. Chee. So, any comments on that, Neil? Overall?
I could probably comment all day.
Well, that's why I asked you, because you're never short for a word or two, aren't you?
Never short for words. Well, the question is that often comes up when I think about grounding is the same thing that when I heard about Gerald Pollack's work and the understanding of what we were talking about or what you just mentioned in regards to light hitting the body and of course creating these decidedly negative layers of easy water or structured water in the body. And of course, that being healthy. Basically, if we want to be healthy, we should go to beaches. I'm thinking.
Absolutely.
This is what we should do. Because this is exactly what seems to be going on with all those fresh ions coming in from the wind. They get the sun hitting you with all the light, and of course you're grounded. That seems to be something that we really like. Now, I'm just wondering if as much as I like the idea of grounding and the circuitry, as we were just talking about, the idea that just light itself can affect and structure this water inside our bodies.
Well, I'll say that I go back to something which I observed as a kid. Really, if you're in a car and you suddenly go into sunlight, after a while you feel the heat of the sun inside the car. But if you actually touch the glass, it's cold. So I can only assume that the glass is being charged up like a dielectric in a capacitor, and then it's allowing charge through. So it's the actual charge you're feeling on your skin, and not solar radiance, shall we say. It's not heat as such. It's a reaction of the charge on your skin. So I'm wondering if this is the same thing which Chee talks about, the fact you need sunlight, because it's not the actual light, it's the actual charge which is doing it.
Yeah, energy.
Well,
the
energy comes from the charge.
The light is going through the glass and hitting your skin. That's it.
The action.
The light goes through the glass.
Yeah, but the glass itself is cold when you feel it.
Well, of course, because the light is going through.
Well, yes, but there's no energy expended when it
glass,
crosses
it
the
would come
boundary.
through
It's just refraction. It uses a bit of energy to change the speed of the light wave, which refracts it. And then it changes again when it leaves and gains that energy back, it seems.
So we're saying it's the light that causes the heat?
Well, the light reaction.
Because there's no heat as such, because the glass is cold. Unless you're asking the heat to actually heat.
Heat converted from obviously there is some infrared radiation. I'm not saying the sun doesn't have infrared radiation, but when all the other spectral bands are converted into heat when they hit an object, and some are reflected again as light. So,
but
this is why things
you
have
still,
color.
you still had to trying to get heat through something which is cold and then still be hot. Because it's not, when you feel the window, it's literally really quite cold. So what is actually happening, really?
Well, because the light is what's carrying the energy. It only expresses the energy when it is basically processed, when a load is presented. Electrically speaking, that's what you would say. But basically, in this case, a load is when it absorbs the energy, has to transmit it or transmute it into something else. In this case, usually heat. Obviously, with easy water, there's another effect going on. When it hits water, it will charge up these layers, which is something we didn't know until Gerald Pollack's work.
Yeah,
which
well,
is
I think
why it's kind of groundbreaking.
I think it was the same. It'd be charging up the glass and stuff. But, that's...
Can I ask you, Neil, because this Cheese talk and this sort of get-together is going to be focused about roughly on, as I said, the sort of cellular biology scale. I mean, more broadly, I mean, is anything you've learned about the electric universe hypothesis had impacted on how you live your life in terms of your health? Because there's something, talking about astronomy and or nuclear physics is all very abstract, obviously, and a long way from our day-to-day lived experience. And it's just trying to. I've got a thing that I'm going to talk about next month about structured water and how you can do it for yourself at home. Personally, I found it very beneficial, and I just like the fact it's a concrete result. I like listening to engineers more than I like listening to theoreticians, if you see what I mean, because theories can be beautiful and intriguing and wonderful, but
practical evidence.
Well, yeah, results are really kind of useful, aren't they? So I just long way round. Have you come across anything? Have you, in terms of your health, changed anything as a result of coming across the electric universe or the electric cosmology, whatever, however you wanted to put it?
As someone who is not trained in biology or medicine, besides first aid, CPR type things, I found that in an odd way, there's a certain feng shui type atmosphere that's, or in my mind, sort of is going to now when I think about my health and my environment, because with where I live, you have very big changes in seasons. It could be negative 33 and it could be plus 33, so you're going to have the whole range. But in that, I'm much more acutely aware of when snow does its thing. Dry snow will come by. You feel the static in the air. All of that is now just, I'm thinking about it all the time. In terms of lifestyle, I do try to get more sunlight and go out and walk around in the summertime a lot more.
So what do you do for grounding in the winter when it's really too cold to go walking in the snow in your bare feet? I mean, do you have a grounding sheet or any type of grounding device?
I don't think it's really a problem because the air is literally filled with electricity.
But you're draining your body if you're not connected to the ground, surely. You're draining yourself of electrons. The whole point of grounding is so they can come up through the air, through your body and out the top of your head. But if you're not connected to the ground, then you are going to be just draining your body of electrons. This is why I'm moving forward, and this is what I'm doing.
It gets bone dry here in the wintertime, especially this time of year. Right now, it is as dry as you can possibly imagine besides the desert. There's snow all over the place, but you can tell even when the snow goes by, you get what we call snow snakes, which are tubes of snow that float across the road in like currents, if you would, like plasma almost. That's how dry the stuff is. So when you take a shirt off, you can feel the static. If I got up and moved and walked over there, you could hear it in my headphones. I could hear the crackling and the static.
Well,
as
doesn't
it
that say
interacts
there's
with the
even
wire.
more reason to be grounded, surely? You know, I'm going to have to
Well,
send you one of
I'm
my
just saying,
pairs of
if
shoes or something.
I'm just saying, I'm not sure what polarity I'm at, but it's the polarity of the snow, I'm pretty sure. that's my voltage right now, whatever the snow wants it to be.
Okay,
So,
we'll have to talk about
obviously
this.
it gets pretty muggy here in the summertime, so, you know, we like to escape and go to beaches a lot more and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. So Pierce has joined us. We might have
It's quite a trek to get here, by the way.
Yeah, I
The
live.
lady downstairs is pissed off by all the people knocking on the door.
Oh, okay,
I'm ringing the bell.
okay.
Anyway, is this on air? So
Yes.
okay.
Of course it is. Of course we're live. Yeah.
Okay, I have two questions. One is, have we got any actual pictures of these effects of structured water? Because you talked about it and about
Well, that's Pollock stuff.
dyes being
I
concentrated.
Pollock has loads and loads of research and pictures.
Well, what one is you should have pictures on this, not just the words I was going to suggest.
Well, I can show you real quickly.
All right, shall I do the second question while you're looking for them? Right, second question is about cloud nucleation, which you talked about.
Just briefly, yes.
Yeah. Oh, he's gone. Is he still there?
Oh, yes.
Well, I'd like more comments, a bit more on how you think that does work.
Right.
Is it for you or
Well, I was trying to leave structured water for the next talk,
Oh,
because this is
okay.
called cell biology.
right?
Because it touched on Pollock's work so much, because you couldn't do one without the other.
Okay. Well, I don't have much to ask about cell biology, but since we talked about the cloud formation, I don't know if this.
It was basically how negative charges attract one another. It seemed very counterintuitive, but we'll look at how clouds attract one another with how water vapor forms.
Okay. Well, I think
How
this.
plasma works.
What you need to do is go into this in detail, because you see, the theory of cloud formation and the standard meteorology doesn't work. What they have is, you see, if you try and have a collisional model, so a large drop falling through a cloud will bump into some smaller drops and then gather and grow. But the speed of this process is infinitesimal. So the next answer they had was, you've got to have ice in the cloud, and then there's a lower vapor pressure over ice surfaces, so the water droplets evaporate, go onto the ice grows, and then that then falls and melts and turns into a raindrop, okay, which is fine. However, it doesn't explain how thunderstorms happen in the tropics, where it's too warm to get these ice formations.
Yeah, you quite often get electrical storms anyway without any water.
Well, of course. Well, yeah, I'm just talking about how droplets form. So it needs something else other than the ice theory. That's what
It
I'm
could
saying.
be a template theory. All you need is a small nucleus of something, and because of
Well,
structure.
no, because you've got to have a rate at which stuff can accumulate, you see. I mean, a big drop falling through a cloud of smaller drops is a template, and it crashes into them. But the process is too slow. You do the sum, the process is far too slow. So you've got to have something else. There may be this mechanism of structured water can do that, because that could work in the tropics.
Because it works every day as a battery.
Well, maybe, but we need
Isn't
quantitative
it
measurements
the
to
vapor
show.
losing energy and becoming liquid?
Pardon?
It's in vapor form to start with, and to go down to the water structure state, it has to lose energy. So
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
so it's a process of the actual
No.
vapor losing
Talking
energy.
about how does a cloud actually build? Because
Yeah.
otherwise you just get tiny droplets and they stay like that.
Yeah.
You see, but it doesn't happen. In a real cloud, you get big droplets and they fall out of the sky.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a reason for this. And the nucleation mechanism of ice could work, but it can't apply. And it's got problems, but it can't work in the tropics.
If the
where
cloud
there
is
isn't
just a
any ice.
conduit for the vapour in the higher atmospheric levels, if the clouds are actually working not as actually holding they're formed, partially formed themselves, but then act as a actual.
No, I'm talking about
conduit.
the issue of how rain forms. Right.
Can
If you have a vapor of petrol or something, it just stays like that. You know what I mean?
We're talking about
Or droplets,
scale,
Yeah.
but is there sort of a minimum size and a maximum size of a water droplet? Do they tend to coalesce around a certain size? 'Cause
Well, yeah. When they
There is a
reach a
maximum
certain size,
size.
they break up when they're falling through the atmosphere because
Right.
of friction. But you
Yeah.
see, to fall, they've got to reach a big enough size.
but
Whereas-
but they can't keep on breaking up, otherwise they just turn back into vapour. So there's sort of must be a sort of sweet
Well,
if you like.
the
in terms of
bigger
size.
ones will crash into smaller ones. That's the idea. But the speed of that process is too slow. You see. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. So
No.
there has to be some mechanism for getting them to clump up quicker, and maybe more that this electrical idea of structured water could do that.
Yeah. I was just wondering
It
whether
has to do that because there isn't ice between the ice into the ice
seedings.
mechanism.
Yeah. I just wondered whether like there was a certain size of a water droplet that, if you like, would facilitate that process. I mean, if it was too small or too large.
Well, if it's too small, it falls too slowly.
Yeah.
If it's large, it gets faster and faster, then it breaks up.
Yeah.
So the optimum size is probably the size that hits you on the head when you're going.
They're kind of, there's some kind of natural.
Critical mass.
They're balanced to it. So real quick, I was going to show you.
Oh right, those pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just showing pictures.
Can you show them on the screen?
I could probably find them, but what you're looking at there is what diagrams of H3O2,
Oh yeah, no.
which tends to form as structure as sort
No,
of
that's
hexagonal
What I meant
lattice.
is he was talking about the dyes separating.
Yeah,
You know, which
Yeah,
of course,
I think so,
like a picture you can show to kids. Like,
yeah, you got loads.
yeah. I can.
I don't mean ideas like this. I mean dye stuff in water. You know.
Okay, yeah, I can show you.
What a fantastic looking book.
It's
Yeah,
a really great book.
yeah. This is the fourth phase of water by Gerard Pollack.
It's
Yeah.
full of diagrams. It shows every single investigation they've done to look at 4 phases of water.
And
That looks really cool, man.
it's a very good
I
book.
used to do solid state physics, but I didn't. We never talked about that.
So yeah. What we're going to do for next month is, again, it's going to be roughly biological. We're keeping to the animal scale, going up. We'll be talking to Eileen McCusick and a couple of other people to see if they'll join the conversation. As soon as we're talking about structured water, I've got a way I'm going to share that you can make structured water. There are all kinds of devices for making structured water. Some of them are very fancy and cost hundreds of pounds. I've worked out a way you can do it using natural objects for less than £10 probably, and I'm really keen to share that because I think it's got a direct health benefit. Previously, I used this method for structuring water to do a little experiment where I grew cress. I grew cress using structured and unstructured water and got a significant improvement of the.
Really, watercress, you mean?
Yeah. It was really, it was like a kid's experiment because I haven't got the budget for, but the Chinese state do, for example. I mean, the Chinese state now use structured water to increase, yields and decrease harvest time. So that's when I started paying attention to it because, again, the Chinese are a country, as you pointed out, run by engineers, not lawyers. So they tend to get things done. There's a very simple way you can structure water using natural objects. I'm going to share that, and hopefully I'm going to recreate this little cress experiment. So I have something to share there. It's really trying to focus on, let's say, health benefits like we have today, and whole system, like looking at the human body and other, organisms, creatures, animals, as a whole, rather than as we've done today, focusing on cellular stuff. I mean, all this stuff crosses over, but then the month after, we get into that would be April. In May, we're going to ask Phil Pearce to talk us through the weather from an electrical point of view, or if you like, and get some geology in.
No, yeah, we'll certainly plan on exploring that side a lot more, and which will be ongoing from today, trying to actually figure out how it works, the actual mechanics. Obviously, I've been working on that as Neil rightly knows. I've talked a couple of times on this show about it. So we've got some definite ideas, and yeah, we really want to pin down how the actual mechanics work. You know, from the inflow of charge into trying to get to the poles, and the outflow of radiation. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to touching on that again, certainly. But
Neil, what have you got coming up with the electric view?
Oh my goodness. Well, we're going to have Julie and West on again, or for the first time actually. Chris Dunn, we're trying to get on again. He should be coming up again, and hopefully Brian Forrester. And we have an opportunity. Well, I just interviewed William Sosa. He did a wonderful presentation on some devices that he noticed, or at least he has built that replicate structure or some electrical devices that the Egyptians might have had. So,
oh really? Oh, well, the Anks and such like, which is.
You're talking like the Baghdad battery, that sort of thing.
Well, that would be sort of the devices that were powering it. Yeah, devices like that, which are not incredibly complex. Something that anyone with a rudimentary understanding of electricity could get. You know, but to add to what we're seeing coming up, just so you know, we are at a point where they're using electric or biological cells to make circuits. So that we can, and specifically what they're trying to do is build NOR gates, which are basically to allow logic to be done with cells, which will allow you to have basically, in essence, living computers. But
well, that goes back to Star Trek again, don't it? I mean, they had biopacks as part of their computer brain.
Well, they don't expect it to be anywhere near as fast as, say, for example, a actual computer, but the benefit to having one that is on the body that can affect cells directly would be beneficial. That could be part of a smaller machine that doesn't have to work very fast, but will affect repairs or something.
Okay.
That's their goal anyway.
So I suppose you could
even
even
build the salamander lid.
Well, that's what I was wondering about a more friendly type of pacemaker, if you can make it out of actual bio cells. But you know, it's still going to affect. I mean, can you make it more natural? What do you reckon, Chee? I mean, would it be better to make a pacemaker rather than being a solid electronic device? Could you make it possibly more friendly to the body?
I think it's just mainly so a pacemaker is basically you've got a device and you've got electrodes going into the heart.
Okay.
So it's mainly the device that has a set battery that's programmed, and the way the program is wirelessly.
Yeah.
So it's that wireless issue that can not
be a problem.
Yeah.
How do they charge the battery?
Externally. It lasts for a certain amount of time, takes a very low voltage, and eventually it runs out of juice and you have to
reoperate.
Reoperate, yes.
Oh, wow, okay. Well, you got anything to say, Anne? Or?
I wanted to ask Dr. Chee.
Oh, yes.
What you were saying that up until the age of 7, children are able to regenerate parts of their bodies that are damaged, for example, the fingertip.
Yes.
And that goes up to the nail, the first part of the nail bed. Is there a connection between that and green stick fractures? Because that's similar.
I suppose so. Basically, when they're young, they still have a lot of stem cells floating about. The younger, the better, right? So up to a certain age, we become more dense, we become more part of this real material world from a more spiritual point of view. So maybe they can closely tie in.
So is there something in the base of the nail which produces nails that is actually stopping the rest of the skin regenerating? I mean, why does it stop there?
We have to look at the biomorphic field to have an answer for that.
I think
Well,
remembering from Becker, what he said was if he gets to the bone or below, to the point where the idea of regrowing bone, or not, the body doesn't have the capacity to regrow bone, so you've kind of crossed.
Well, it does in the salamander leg, the whole leg gets grown.
Yeah, we're talking about humans.
Yeah, but it's obviously
Yeah,
we're trying to find out.
Well, the nails are growing all the time.
Yeah.
It's true. It's a growing thing, and
Yeah.
if you never do the washing up, then the nail gets longer, as my mother pointed out.
I wonder where they come from.
So it's not. That's what's happening in the nail. It's not the same as regenerating a bone or something.
But it's something that
It does
stops
it all the time,
So if it
but
hasn't
it's
goes
interesting.
into there, regenerates it, then there's something there that's stopping the rest of it regenerating, surely. Is it the growing nail mechanism that's stopping the rest?
Well, skin regrows as well. If you cut yourself, skin
Yeah, I
regrows.
know, but we're talking about the whole end of a finger. aren't
If
we?
you look at plant
Well, I don't know about
biology,
the ends of fingers. What
Well,
I'm
that's-
saying
that's
is the
what-
ends of fingers can get
Yeah,
replaced. by
the
children.
whole end of a finger.
Yeah,
pointed
this
down
is
to
something.
the nail.
Yeah.
What about the
Can I?
fingerprint?
Oh,
I don't know. What do you know
The,
about the fingerprint?
The fingerprint. Is
I'd
that
like
what
to
it is?
develop a conversation a bit further, if I may.
Okay.
You were saying earlier that other forms of life can regenerate themselves more easily.
yes,
I was going to ask you two questions. One of them, the connection with telomeres, because
Right.
that's also part of rejuvenation. And the other side of it is morphogenetic resonance.
right. So I don't know how much study we have in the biomorphic or morphogenetic kind of resonance. It's certainly something everyone's quite interested in. How do we measure that? I suppose if you think esoterically, it makes a lot more sense that, how do you tell a head or a tail to form? What are the part of the blueprints that do that?
Well, Rupert Sheldrake has actually written quite a lot about it, and he comes from a sort of botanical background. But the idea is that the cell has knowledge of what it should look like in its entirety. And as a result of that, for example, lizards, when I was a child in Cyprus, we used to lift up a stone and the lizard would drop its tail and run, and then it would eventually grow a new tail. So that's the sort of thing I'm suggesting. And also Curlian photography, where they looked at the electric charge of cells on plants after the leaves had been cut, and you could see a sort of picture of what the leaf where the leaf was before, even though the leaf didn't exist on the plant anymore. Am I straying into sort of?
Well, yeah, but that's
Well,
okay.
you're saying
It's cool.
you're saying that there's kind of an
Electrical
Well,
awareness.
yeah, I mean,
It's almost the electrical field was left there, even though he's taken.
Or like a blueprint,
taken
or an
right.
electrical blueprint.
well, yeah, the whole morphogenetic thing is that the idea that
It's
you've got.
morphogenic, isn't it? Not morphogenic.
Okay.
I think.
So,
I don't accept Rupert Sheldrake.
Well, it's morphic resonance is how, but it's the idea of how does you got 10 cells, how do 2 cells, 4 cells, 8 cells, how do those, they're all identical, how does one node turn into a tooth and the other turn into an eyeball? There's no clear explanation. If it's all the same DNA, how do these different parts start
It's
organising
almost if
themselves?
there's electrical print there which you grow into.
Well, that's the, yeah.
And there are some tumors where they have a bit of skin, bone, teeth, where they obviously have electrical interference, right?
So a tumour will have different.
There's a specific tumor called teratoma. It's got a mixture of teeth, skin, nails, where it's totally gone chaos. And
So the cells are just producing them.
randomly, yes,
Wow,
yes. It's got
And-
teratoma.
I've never heard of that before. That must.
That's
If we can track down that mechanism.
It's terrifying, is what it is.
What's that here, sorry?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
war on terror.
Terrifying, not teratoma.
Yeah,
That's what it
it's
is.
Teratoma, like
Teratoma.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, like Earth. But no, that's 2 R's, so it's not that either.
Yeah,
You know,
it's quite fun.
No, he said 1 R.
One.
We're just talking. I mean, we're talking about the capacity of children to regenerate, essentially, and that's an established thing. I mean, it reminds me of the what they call parabiosis. Sort of, this is kind of a billionaire's playground when it comes to medicine. For example, there's a guy called Peter Thiel who co-created PayPal. He pays I don't know where he gets it from and how he sources it. He pays for plasma of young people, and he injects himself with the blood plasma of young people.
Yeah, there's more and more that's going on in there.
There are all these things going on. I mean, you could get into all kinds of weird territory with this, but these are definitely
regenerative medicine.
Yeah, regenerative medicine. Peter Thiel, he's on record as saying he wants to live forever.
Well,
he is
Hillary Clinton is.
what? Hillary Clinton?
Well, I won't continue.
Okay.
No, probably best not to.
Yeah, but I mean, there are these people out there with serious resources who are looking into this sort of thing.
Can I add something horrible to that when you finish?
Oh, yes, please. No, it was really that, and I just wondered whether there was any knowledge in the room about this electric, what you could call electromagnetic forces, or the relevance of the electromagnetic force to parabiosis. Because it's definite, there are people making all kinds of ethical decisions and products as a result. But you can, in some college campuses in the States, you can get $10,000 for a pint of your plasma. So don't worry about your tuition fees, just give us your blood. And obviously that is vampire capitalism. It's sort of rawest, but I just sort of throw that in there because it's the same sort of area. Sorry.
Well, I know that after women give birth, they're given the option of eating the placenta because obviously the nutrients in it.
Yeah.
And that, in a way, is sort of self-vampirism, isn't it?
Yes.
But the other side of it is that something very disturbing I heard years ago. I was offered it at a hairdressing salon as a beauty treatment, basically to have some type of serum on my hair, which was made from fetal cells. I won't tell you where the fetal cells come from because it's rather macabre and horrific. But what I'm suggesting is that was already out there as a product that you could buy legitimately.
Yeah.
Sounds horrible.
Well, I'm sure Hillary Clinton would buy.
I thought you said you weren't going to say any more about that.
No, I wasn't.
Do we say, if you say her name another time, does she appear in the room?
6 times.
The ghost of Hillary Clinton.
How did she had some of this neck girl stuff? I don't know. That was Pierce, wasn't it? Yeah. Anyway, we've got now 9 minutes left, so we've got to think about wrapping it up in 9 minutes' time. So, is there any last thoughts
Well, I wanted
from
to
the
ask
floor?
about
Neil, what about
telomeres.
you? Any last thoughts?
Telomeres.
Sorry, what?
Sorry?
Spontaneous human combustion.
Oh, yes.
With regards to electricity and perhaps maybe some sort of breakdown in the circuit of a cell that causes that.
Yeah, no, I've wondered about
with
this
all the electrical
before.
potential of each of the cells, when we add it up, it's more than enough to consume the core of the human body. Plus, it might account for things as the bright lights that's been seen and only the immediate area being burned.
Yeah, because I've seen pictures where there's just a leg left. The whole body's gone.
There's pretty
Spontaneous
famous
human
pictures out there, but the truth of the matter is that it has happened and we don't know why.
No.
It's happened to animals too.
No,
We don't
yeah,
know
well,
why.
Sorry, Neil, what? I'm aware of
Rare as
the.
heck, though.
I'm aware of the phrase spontaneous human combustion. What?
Has this ever happened?
Yeah, I mean,
The other product used
Yes.
petrol.
No, there's
No, it's not
it literally
happening.
burns from inside out, and there's been, they found, I remember the first time I saw a picture, it was literally an old woman's leg and her Zimmer frame, and it was literally just her leg left, the rest had been charred. It's like almost vaporised, which
But
would,
the house didn't burn.
yeah, no, it's as if
I've
it's
seen
been
it. I've seen it
vaporised, the
myself.
body's been vaporised from the inside, which, would go back to an electrical breakdown, which
The only witness that apparently that ever saw something was incredibly bright light when it happened. So that was kind of
So
interesting.
you're suggesting there's some kind of chain reaction within the body that was.
Yeah, well, that's what. Yeah,
Well, there's a lot of energy there.
Sure.
I don't know. I can't. Like just in simple. Let's just guess how many cells there are in the human body, and then say that there is this much capacitance in each cell, just in your torso, and then that gives you a relative Q number of charge.
Yeah.
and that Q can be directly converted into joules and watts and so forth. So, there's more than enough there to. It only takes about 130,000, 150,000 joules to totally consume a human body in a crematorium, for example. Don't ask.
So that could be cheaper than burning them. Turn the switch and they can combust.
Maybe it's a Lord Kelvin's experiment on the body.
Save them.
You can use them as a
Funeral
power
feast.
station. Crematorium power station.
Oh, here we go. Silent Green.
But look, seriously, Neil, has spontaneous combustion of humans or even other animals been actually observed?
Well, the results.
We only have witness testimony, but unfortunately, because of our modern world, there's almost always another cause now. We don't really have it. I mean, back in the day, so to speak, before electricity became paramount, these things really stood out. Today, you're going to be burned up in the car you were driving if you had one. Like, oh yeah, he died in the fire of the car. Oh, really? Don't know how. They're going to chalk it up to spontaneous human combustion.
Lithium batteries.
Teslas.
Yeah. Like they must have touched an electrical current in the car or something. I don't know what happened to them.
Yeah, well, it don't seem to be as reported as it was in the past, that's for sure. So I'm wondering if it's...
Well, and I think that's probably because of our modern world actually has electricity and all these other factors that could explain it. The only things that stand out now is, for example, like why the heck did this cow burn and the barn didn't go up? A weird thing like that might happen, and of course that would be more attributed to what the cow might have been eating or some methane gas thing or something, So I'm not trying to say, oh my God, let's go investigate this. I'm just saying it's never been, there's been witnesses, there's been documents, there's been lots of diligent work in cities around the world in the late 1800s especially, and I don't think they're all lying, so I don't know what the effect exactly is, but
it's such a rare occurrence that it doesn't perhaps warrant.
Like it wouldn't be something that we would I can't envision a circumstance. You'd have to be a really rare circumstance, like for you to be considered to have died from it today.
Yeah.
I mean, what situation would it be? I mean, they'd still assume that someone came and murdered you with electricity. Yeah, like he must have came with a generator and plugged these two cords right into his whatever. And that's what and they'll be out hunting for some guy for like years.
Just to finish off, I'm saying, Annie, we're getting close to finishing. Telomeres
and regeneration, because we actually have shorter telomeres as we get older.
Yeah. We should look at cancer cells.
Some fish and turtles, they maintain the same length that they were born with, so they're sort of hundreds of years old. Yes.
Any knowledge about that in the room? Other than
not offhand, I'll have to re-look at it.
Imagine for a minute I was an idiot and I didn't know exactly what a telomere was.
Well, it's just me.
Okay, imagine that.
He's a telomere.
Telomere.
That's my frame of mind.
My understanding is that telomere is a part of the genetic imprint in our DNA.
It's the end of it.
Yes, and it's the last part of it. But some people have it shorter than others, and as you get older, as you age, one imagines that the energy of it is being consumed, which is why.
And you say it's at the end of the DNA. What function?
It's like a zipper, you end the zipper. So when you replicate the DNA and RNA, it eventually runs out of.
So it's like a full stop on the DNA.
Well, some
in
people,
terms of the chemical.
As you get older, the end of it gets more damaged, and you look older.
Yeah,
then eventually you snuff it.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Just sort of kind of related to that, and the thing about animals not replicating themselves, rejuvenating parts of them. Maybe we ought to do a little study on which animals are best at this and which not, because you mentioned lizards.
Salamanders.
Yeah, and cats, for example, when they have accidents, they regenerate their bodies astoundingly quickly compared with all other mammals. So maybe there's something special about cat cells. I don't know. But
I do think
they're the mammals and closest to us in
cats live halfway in the spherical anyway.
Well, maybe. I'm not an expert on that. But I think it's a really interesting thing about what animals and cells can regenerate best. Because that is, of course, fantastic medical importance if it can be understood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
well,
think jellyfish and lobsters are both immortal as well. We've had grabbed recently. There was a lobster that's picked up off the shore here, and I think it was it was over 150 years old.
Wow. How did they know that? Did it have a
Because they keep growing for years, just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. They shed their shells.
Oh, I
and
see.
get bigger.
So from the sides, you mean? Or it might have been overfed.
Yeah, I mean there are.
No, it's interesting though. That was really interesting.
You'd have to look at like why turtles, for example.
Yeah, they live up 100 years.
You know, whether there's anything to do with the turtles.
Well, some trees go on growing, but most trees eventually do actually die as opposed to just.
Well, you get like yew trees last thousands of years, don't they? Or
Some trees do.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've come up to 1930s. We've come to the end of our little show for this month. Does anyone like to have a quick last word, or should we call it a day there?
Well, can I say thank you to Nick?
I've got an advert in. Come to weatheraction.com and buy some forecasts. Get the whole spring now.
Get
And we're
all
in
your
for
weather
more
forecasts.
and more extreme contrasts of warm bits and very cold bits. And there's some more snow on the way from Britain. And we're going to have a very interesting spring in the whole of Europe.
Oh, now we'll see how this pans out when we talk again next month.
you're saying all the seasons are mixed up.
No. We got a very late springs happening, so we've got winter carrying on into spring. Although we've had warm bits of February, they were co-associated with cold bits each side of that blocking pattern over Britain. So it was nothing overall warm, it was actually overall cold. But the extreme blocking patterns giving like snow in Greece or even North Africa, which happened all at the same time as
last week,
in warm in Britain, those type of things are going to carry on into March and April.
Did you want to say something, Rob?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you very much to everyone who came today. Neil, thank you very much. It's lovely. If you know, to meet you a bit more, if you know what I mean. One time I'll shake your hand, I'm sure, I hope.
Sure.
Just again to say thank you so much to Chee for putting together that presentation. That is going to be available on electrocosmology.com, our little website.
And also on the YouTube channel.
And this will be coming up on the YouTube
That
channel.
might take a bit of clever editing because my phone decided to stop recording at some point and I suddenly had to redo it.
Right.
So, but we'll no doubt
We'll
knit it all together like we did last time.
We'll work
And
it
if
out.
any bits are missed out, we do apologise. But
Like I say, Chee's, if you're interested, Chee's presentation will be available via the website in the next few days.
we want to do all these properly anyway for the website, so we're going to re-record it and do it and record it properly. But we like to give it out live and.
One more time, just to say what our intention over the year is to talk on a roughly scalar basis, starting with atoms, ending with galaxies, going because there are these natural scales where phenomena seem to occur.
Yeah, the electricity is fractal, and that's what we're aiming to do is to show the fractal nature of it.
Small.
Anyway, everybody, thank you for coming, and in the future, and we'll see you soon.
Where's the camera?
Oh yes.
Ta-da!